Bootlegging, an extremely controversial topic in the collecting community. Some people love it, some people hate it. Some people claim that it's the correct pricing for figures in this figure market. Some people believe that it is blatantly stealing from the artists that originally came up with the concepts for these designs. Regardless of your stance on the topic, we have one mission today, and that's to see whether these bootlegs compete with the more expensive options on the figure market. Without further ado, let's get right into the unboxing. Alright, so this is a pretty big box to start off with, but I believe there's 2 figures in this one. There we go. Yeah, they really didn't use any protection for this. Hopefully it is not destroyed. Wow. Now, this Roxy figure is a bootleg of a very popular Kotobukiya figure, and I will say, this bootleg is very convincing. It almost looks one-to-one to the original Kotobukiya version. If you really are only giving a slight glance to it, you're probably going to have a hard time spotting the differences, but the differences are there. This figure, if you look closely, is definitely not as polished, and the colors are a little bit different. The one that really stood out to me the most, just right off the bat, was the cloak. Now, the cloak is more of like a dark mustard color, or more like burlap. However, the original Roxy figure by Kotobukiya had more of a burnt sienna, or a more orange colorway. So the colors are definitely a bit off. And on top of that, the cutout of the cape is not very clean. There is some jagged edges across the figure, which are indicative of a lower quality bootleg. Furthermore, the hair color is off. The Kotobukiya version uses a much deeper blue versus this bootleg, which uses a lighter blue. On top of the fact that the hair itself, the hair sculpt, is rougher in places, and her cowlick is also much flatter, a lot less defined than the legit version. Lower quality, which is to be expected. This figure did also arrive broken. So when AliExpress sent this figure, they really didn't do a good job with securing the package. So she was kind of bouncing around in the soft packaging. But surprisingly, the only piece that broke off of her was one of her ribbons on her pigtails, which I guess is pretty lucky. However, it just kind of shows that some of these sellers really don't care how they ship these figures. If they come in one piece, they come in one piece. If they don't, then they don't. But I guess that's just what $7 gets you. Overall, the only issues that I can find on this figure are the inconsistent coloring and the seam lines that were left over from the assembly process. The shipping is really a vendor issue, not understanding the perilous journey these figures have to make when coming all the way from China to your doorstep. So it's a really decent figure for the price point, of course. And now the original version, the legit Kotobukiya figure, that Roxy figure is back on pre-order. So you won't have to pay the ludicrous aftermarket prices nowadays. So you have an option to get her legitimately. But as long as you don't overpay for this figure, I'd say that the bootleg looks pretty good. Very comparable to your standard prize figure. Man, this box is falling apart. There we go. Oh boy. Man, this blister packaging has seen better days. Barely holding together. Yeah, there is no way I can salvage that. Alright, there you go. Here we have Killer Bee, using his 8-sword style and releasing his Jinchuriki state, his 8-tails beast, otherwise known as the Gyuki. Definitely a Killer Bee in the heat of battle, and it looks fantastic. I really do like the concept. We don't get a lot of Killer Bee merchandise, so seeing that resins and now bootlegs of said resins exist is a pretty exciting thing to see. And because this particular figure is so stylized, I don't really have too many complaints. They definitely did a lot of work when it comes to the overall textures and presentation of this figure, and it's very dynamic. I really do love how his headband is fluttering in the wind. I just love the contorting of his muscles as he's holding the blades in between his armpits and his elbows. It is just really cool. Like, I really do love the coloring and the intentional weathering of this figure. They really captured his facial expressions very well, and the sculpting of his mouth is very well done as he's gripping yet another blade. Execution of this figure is very impressive. It's a art style that I don't see a lot in these type of figures, in these type of anime figures. I'm just a fan of just how different it looks. And they still managed to capture a lot of detail despite how complicated this overall sculpt is. I guess the biggest issue that I had with this figure is honestly how they decided to ship him. Now, I did select him as a no box option, but I did expect him to be wrapped up appropriately so he wouldn't be broken during shipping. However, they kind of used some really shoddy looking blister packaging in a very unprotected box. So what ended up happening as I'm unwrapping him is I'm noticing that multiple swords that he's holding were broken. And I really do feel like that during the packaging, that was where that disaster happened. On top of that, his swords that he still has in hand are looking very limp. Like, his swords look like they're suffering from ED. Yeah, not that great. I'm sure there's things I can do to straighten them out a bit more. Maybe like applying a bit of heat, or using a straight piece of paper clip or something to prop the swords up. But it just doesn't look as clean. It makes him look a lot cheaper. And I do understand this is a lot of detail to be had on a $40 figure, so I might be nitpicking a bit too hard. However, that is still a lot of money to spend for a bootleg figure in general. Especially since with that, you could probably, with a little bit more money, you could buy, a lower end scale figure, or heck, a Nendoroid. There's just a lot of options within that price range, especially when the seller is shipping these figures very shoddily, and by the time it hits your doorstep, it might be broken in multiple places. It's just stops becoming a really good value. But I do really love his pose and how dynamic he looks. So maybe one day I'll actually look into getting his actual resin figure, because this is a absolutely sick design. Another soft package. Yeah, these soft packagings aren't it. Hopefully it's not too broken like the others. There we go, yep. And then, oh wait, this is supposed to be down. Okie dokie. Alright, place the fan on here. There we go. I feel like I'm already gonna break something. His neck's sticking out way too much. Holy crap. Okay. I think I got it, but that took way too much effort. Now here we have yet another Naruto figure. We have Madara Uchiha. Now this bootleg of Madara is pretty impressive. They did a very good job on the texturing. A very defined hair sculpt. Comes with his war fan and is propped on a sculpted base. Like, conceptually, it is a very good figure, despite being, yet again, a bootleg. However, the weakest part of this figure is the face. I just don't really see Madara in this figure. Of course, this is Edo Tensei Madara, so it's supposed to be a bit more weathered with cracks in the face and whatnot. But I'm just not too convinced that this is Madara. The armor is really bent in an awkward way on the left side. It's it really does take away from just the excellent sculpting, because no matter how many times I try to bend it back into place, it just never corrects itself. I did try applying a little bit of heat and whatnot, but I just couldn't get it to look natural. And eventually it always curls back up, the armor flap. But other than those few details I pointed out, it's a pretty good figure. If you're looking for a affordable Madara Uchiha to add to your collection, this might be a good option for you. I'm not satisfied with this, unfortunately. If I were in the market for Madara Uchiha, I'd probably save up for the resin instead. And now we have our final figure. Hopefully this one is better. Oh, and this one's actually bubble wrapped. Oh boy, I already see some broken pieces. Oh no. Yeah, oh boy. Wow. Oh god, this is spectacularly scuffed. And now here is our final figure of the day, and that is Mona from Genshin Impact. And This is a particular garage kit from, I believe, Wonderfest 2024, or was it 2023? I'm not quite sure, but this is one of the rarer garage kits and the more expensive ones. I know when she's on sale at some of these Wonder events, she usually goes for about 300,000 yen, or roughly like $250, and that is a unpainted resin kit. So she is pretty pricey, a pretty pricey figure indeed. So it was really surprising to find her on AliExpress, bootlegged of course, for a pricing between $40 to $50, which is remarkably cheaper than a resin kit of her, a legitimate resin kit of her. So I went ahead and decided to check it out and do this review. And yeah, she's kind of disappointing. I always did find it that her face looked a little derpy on the original garage kit, but they somehow were able to make her face even derpier. It just looks really goofy. It makes it really hard to take Mona seriously in this particular sculpt. Her hair, pretty standard as bootlegs go, has some sculpting issues, some sanding issues. It's passable for the most part. Where it starts getting a little unacceptable is the broken pieces that are found on her. For example, on her cloak, on her cape, I should say, there's supposed to be these stars on the end. One of them is broken because once again, the shippers didn't properly ship her, so she came in broken. Her hat actually doesn't fit properly on her head. If you try to put her hat on her head, it'll immediately pop off because it doesn't sit properly on her pigtails, over her pigtails. Her pigtails take up too much space on her head, making it very hard to put the hat on. I'm not sure if the original garage kit did this better so that you could properly place the hat onto her, but that is a huge miss by the bootleggers that the hat isn't able to be placed on properly. I do like the water sculpting that they did for this figure, albeit it's a little bit unstable, so the chances of tipping her is a lot higher than other figures. So she's a little bit precarious to place on a shelf. It does make me a little bit nervous handling her at all. The tome that she carries around with her is pretty well made. I am pleasantly surprised that there's actual images and text inside of the pages of the book. It is actually higher quality than I would have anticipated. She is decent. However, is she worth $40? I'm not really sure. There's enough issues to stay away from this bootleg. I would rather pay for, the legitimate Monas. The bootleg is just not able to capture all of that with just recasting. Conceptually, this figure looks amazing, and I really do hope the original garage kit gets picked up by a licensed manufacturer so that we can see her in all of her glory. Because it would be quite a shame for this figure to only be available as a garage kit. And with that, thank you very much for joining me on this bootleg figure review. If you liked what you saw, please comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video. See ya!